So tell us a little bit about Assassin's Creed Unity and how it is a current new generation game.
All right. So from the ground up, it was always going to be, well, back then, next generation game. Right now, current gen game. So we really wanted Unity to be sort of a new start for the franchise, to have the same impact that Assassin's Creed 1 had back then with Xbox 360 and PS3, sort of redefined what it is, what a next generation action-adventure game is. So this was our main goal, our initial mandate. So for this, we needed to completely revamp the three core pillars, navigation, stealth, and combat. We also needed to recreate a new way of actually playing the game in an open world environment, like a new motivation for player, which is now based on character progression rather than simply the narrative. The way missions are built is now a much more open way. We encourage players to express themselves in the way they played the missions. They're more replayable, they're more systemic. We went back to the roots, to the basics of one huge sprawling city filled with high density of content. And we also focused on, obviously, co-op and massive crowds of up to about 5,000 NPCs on screen.
Can you tell us about how the combat system will work now in comparison to the previous games?
All right, combat is much more challenging. I mean, it's more fun. It's based on a sort of strike, dodge, parry, block type of mechanic where you need to figure out what enemy you're facing and then adapt your strategy to that enemy. For example, if somebody's wielding a heavy axe, maybe blocking might not be the best answer, but dodging and then countering. You cannot automatic counter anymore, so it's a lot more challenging again. And the reason we're doing this is because if combat is the path of least resistance, this is how every mission will end up. Because stealth wants to, the fail state of stealth is discovery. And the outcome of discovery is often combat. So if every mission ends with the fighting being the path of least resistance, this is how every mission is going to end. So now what we're doing is we're adjusting combat to be more challenging, but we're giving you the tools to vanish, to regain the high ground and restart the mission.
Now, if the game takes place in Paris during a very tumultuous period and there's so much chaos going on in the streets, is there as much of a priority on stealth now with so much going on?
There is, because even though there's a lot of stuff going on, people are very loud, they're writing, stuff like that, there's still a certain level of control. And I mean, especially that the type of missions you're doing sometimes involve infiltrating places that are well guarded. So they will be looking out for you. I mean, if you go into a place that's guarded by, where an important target is located and it's guarded by many guards, obviously if they see you running around, they're going to chase you. So yeah, stealth is still very much the emphasis of the game. And we've actually upgraded stealth quite a lot. What we've done is, first of all, we've added a stealth mode. It gives you sort of a crouch position, you're faster, more fluid movement, you have covers that you can snap to. We've changed the way guards actually detect you. There's actually a last known position, a line of sight thing. So they're looking at you, you run away, they come and they essentially look for you at the last place where they saw you. And if there's other people around, they'll actually push people around, try to interrogate them. They'll actually search for you in crowd flows. Also, stealth is all about readability. It's about control and readability. So your awareness of people and how they're spotting you. So before, we had a system that was more NPC-centric. You were looking at the enemies and you saw a little triangle on their head and you could see it fill up as they're detecting you, right? The problem with this is if you're facing the other way, there might be somebody sneaking up on you like about 10 feet behind you and you're not going to see them. You're going to be detected, you're going to be frustrated because you feel as though you weren't given the appropriate amount of information. What we have now is a system that is character-based. So you'll have, for all enemies that are behind you, you'll have a sort of a little belt that appears in the HUD around you, and you'll see that there's somebody behind you detecting you. So it's more contextual, it's more readable, it gives you more control.
Oh, cool. Tell us about Arno and the story.
All right, Arno is on a redemption quest. Something happens at the beginning of the game where Arno feels that he blundered and a great tragedy ensued because of that, something that he perceives as being his fault. So he joins the assassins, and at the beginning, especially at the beginning, they're more a means to an end for him. I mean, he does this because the people responsible for that great tragedy ultimately are the Templars, and by joining the assassins, he feels as though he will have a better chance of actually stopping them. But then the story really changes, and it's a multi-layered story, right? On the first layer, it's a redemption quest. On the second layer, it's a Cornelian dilemma. It's a very specific type of catch-22 where a character needs to choose between love and duty. And on a third layer, a much deeper layer, it's really a story about extremism, about like an event like the French Revolution, which was an event that brought us the modern world. I mean, it was very chaotic, very brutal, but it's also the event that brought us the Charter for Human Rights, right? The basis of the UN was born during the French Revolution. It's one of the most awesome documents ever written. It starts with every person is equal, right? And so it's a very polarizing moment, and it brings out the best and worst in people. And it's also a study on how, when taken to extremes, any opposite political movements, if you take them enough to extremes, they just roll back and become the same thing.
Can you tell us a little bit about how the parkour movement has been improved in the new game?
Yeah, certainly. So parkour, I mean, if you look at open world games like Watch Dogs or GTA, you have a car, you have a character. The car is for movement, the character is for more micro level gameplay. In Assassin's Creed, the character is also the vehicle, right? So it needs to be fluid, it needs to be fun, it needs to be based on flow. So this is what we did. We really redid the parkour system to rely more on fluidity and organic nature of parkouring itself. So you can now, for example, you can run off a wall and diagonally just engage from running into parkouring automatically. You can parkour up with input, like for example, right trigger A, but you can also parkour down by holding the B button. So it gives you more control. It's still extremely accessible, but it gives you more control, and especially it really favors flow state. And flow state is really a synonym for fun. You know, whenever somebody says something is fun, is because they get into that flow state, and that's what we're trying to encourage with parkour.
You mentioned in the demonstration that the focus of Unity will be on character progression. What can you go into detail about some of that progression? Is it skills? Is it items? Gear?
So yeah, so Arno starts off as not even as an assassin. He becomes an assassin. You'll actually witness this, and through that, you also sort of become an assassin. And the Arno's progression through the game, from novice to master assassin, also reflects your progression, right, from novice to master assassin. So that progression is interpreted through many different things. Like there's skill points that you get. You can actually buy skills. Depending on your own play style, you'll favor some skills over other ones, which hopefully will make you complementary with your friends when you actually join and play together. And then we also have gear elements. I mean, this is something that this sort of customization is something that we've had since AC2. I mean, you could get different costumes, colors, different weapons. The thing is, back then, they were just aesthetic. Now, every gear element actually has a gameplay impact. For example, a hood might make you blend faster into a blend group. Boots might make you survive a fall from a greater height before receiving damage. The weapons, not only do they have different damage, but they have different rate of attack. So a heavy axe will obviously be more powerful, but it'll take longer to swing. So all of this is part of what we call our progression.
Let's talk about the co-op gameplay.
Yep.
How does it work?
So typically in all other AC games, we focus on our main protagonists' struggle, their own unique mission, right? But they're also part of a brotherhood, the assassins. So in Unity, we have something that we call the brotherhood missions. Brotherhood missions are missions that the main character does for the Assassin's Brotherhood. These are things that have nothing to do with Arno's own personal redemption quest. They have to do with the assassins and how they're handling the French Revolution. So they all have to do with famous characters, monuments, events, or events. These are 30 to 40-minute missions. They're open-ended. They have a 360-degree approach, which means you can play them and replay them different ways. And this is what you're doing when you're playing co-op. You can play these missions from 1 to 4 players. And when you're playing, because our game is based on Arno's progression, on one single progression, the character's progression is really what gels everything together. This is your motivation through the open world, right? This is what will encourage you to, do the different types of missions, is the different things that each type of mission gives you for your progression. Because the whole game is anchored on this progression, you're always playing Arno. So when you're playing co-op, you're actually playing as Arno. Your friends look like other assassins. What we're doing is we're keeping their unique gear, because we want you to be able to ask the questions like, where'd you get that cool sword or the hood, whatever. But we're just swapping Arno's face by, we have a database of assassins' faces. From their perspective, they're playing Arno and they see your unique gear and we replace the face. And this is the solution that we found to be able to keep that single unique progression of a unique character, which was really what's gelling all of the different activities you have within the open world. That's what's gelling them together.
About how many co-op missions are there?
There's 11.
And do they scale in difficulty depending on how many players are participating?
There is a little bit of an adjustment that's done at checkpoints, but the missions ultimately, the core difficulty of the mission is determined, it's predetermined. They're all unlocked. You can do whichever you want, whenever you want, because they're all standalone stories, but they're rated with star system, from 1 to 5 stars. And also some missions are recommended for 2 players, other missions are recommended for 4 players. However, you can certainly try a 4-player mission alone. You can certainly try a 4-player mission with just 2 players. It's really up to you. And actually, your imagination and your willingness to explore might provide you with a really unique and cool way to accomplish the mission where you bypass that difficulty by just using your skills and your imagination.
Cool. So in previous games, there was an economics model and there were sea battles. Are you leaving that all behind for Unity, or are they going to be included somehow?
They are. And I mean, all of the naval stuff is really cool. I mean, a lot of the inspiration we got for many of the systemic elements, I mean, it comes from all of that stuff. But what we wanted to do with Unity was do that, but within the core experience, not with some secondary experience like the ship. We wanted to bring that to the core Assassin's Creed experience. So the economy is all based on skill points and on the gear elements. And because the skill points and the gear elements really have a bearing on gameplay, it's a very meaningful economy. Plus, we also have a layer of economy in the city. We have something that we call remember the villa from AC2 or the homestead, right? We have something called a café théâtre. It's a café théâtre. It's based on the idea that one of the things that sparked the revolution and even sparked the scientific and cultural revolution of that period was that they had these cafes that they opened up throughout Paris, and these were places where social classes didn't stand. You didn't have to get up for a nobleman, and people from all walks of life, they were talked about a lot of different things from different expertise, like scientists, writers, politicians. They all started talking and creating new ideas. And they were drinking an upper coffee instead of drinking a downer like alcohol. This was the introduction of coffee into Europe. So this is really the birth of all of that stuff. We wanted to have this in the game. So you can actually purchase your Café Théâtre, and there's actually a stage with content that you can unlock. And then every district of the city has a little satellite that you can purchase that actually adds content to your main building. Once that little satellite is unlocked, it opens up missions. These missions, when you actually perform them, they change the crowd ecosystem in that district. So you'll have less extremists and you'll have more just regular crowd, the regular people, which then actually change the way that you play missions in that area, because it'll change the opportunities. You'll have more allies helping you during missions, stuff like that.
Excellent. Release date and consoles?
October 28th for Xbox One, PS4, and PC.